The slap echoed louder than any punch ever could, freezing a packed room in a single breath. Cameras flashed, voices stopped, and for a split second, time itself seemed to hesitate. No one expected what came next. Not the reporters, not the crowd, not even the man who threw it. Because the man who was struck did not react the way anyone imagined. The hall was overflowing with noise before that moment, filled with reporters, handlers, and fans pressing in from every side. Conversations overlapped, cameras snapped endlessly, and anticipation hung thick in the air. Two fighters stood only feet apart, about to face each other before the biggest night. It was the kind of tension that usually explodes into words, not silence. One of them entered with a presence that shifted the entire room without effort. The noise grew louder, almost automatically, as if pulled toward him. He moved with calm certainty, like someone who already knew how everything would unfold. Across from him stood a powerful opponent, already waiting, already talking all week, building his moment. That opponent had spent days making. The reaction came a second later, like an explosion after a flash. People shouted, cameras fired rapidly, and bodies surged forward in confusion. Security rushed in, trying to regain control of a moment already out of control. The man who struck stood smiling, knowing exactly what he had done. He had planned it carefully, aiming not just to shock, but to provoke. He wanted anger, a reaction, something raw and uncontrollable. Because losing control before a fight means losing something important before it even begins. What he didn't understand was that his opponent was not like others. The man who was struck did nothing, absolutely nothing. No anger, no retaliation, no sudden movement at all. He simply stood there, looking calmly, as if seeing something others could not. That stillness confused everyone more than any reaction could have. As the chaos continued around them, he turned and walked away without a word. Reporters chased him, throwing questions from every direction. Cameras followed. Meanwhile, the other man trained in silence, focused and precise. He worked not on power, but on timing, movement, and understanding. Every session was deliberate, every motion studied, every pattern analyzed. He was building something invisible but powerful, something that would reveal itself later. When the fight night finally arrived, the atmosphere carried the weight of everything that had happened. The crowd was divided, emotional, invested in what they had witnessed before. One fighter entered with energy, feeding off the attention and noise. The other entered quietly, carrying something deeper within. The bell rang, and the aggressive fighter rushed forward, trying to control the moment immediately. He threw strong combinations, aiming to overwhelm and dominate early. But his punches met empty space more often than not. Small movements, tiny shifts, kept his opponent just out of reach. Round after round, the same pattern continued, but something subtle began to change. The aggressive fighter grew frustrated, throwing more, pushing harder, burning energy. The calm fighter observed, adjusted, and waited patiently. Slowly, the fight shifted without anyone noticing at first. Then, in a single moment, everything turned. A small mistake, repeated too many times, finally met perfect timing.
The knockout did not begin with a punch. It began with a moment that most people had already forgotten. One man stood in his corner, hearing the truth for the first time, that he needed a knockout because nothing else would be enough. His team told him clearly that only one big shot could change what was already slipping away. And as he listened, you could feel the pressure building inside him, pushing him toward a decision he could not take back. He came out in the next round throwing everything with force and urgency, like a man who knew time was running out. Every punch was loaded, every movement driven by the need to end it instantly. He was no longer building a fight, he was gambling on a single moment. And when a fighter reaches that point, control begins to fade. The calm man across from him saw it immediately, the desperation hidden inside those heavy swings. He did not rush, he did not panic, he simply moved with small, precise adjustments. One powerful punch flew wide, pulling the attacker off balance just enough. And in that small opening, something decisive began. A sharp combination landed so clean and so fast that the crowd barely understood what they had seen. One punch connected, then another, then a third, before the reaction could even form. The aggressive fighter dropped to one knee, steadying himself with his glove as the count began. The energy in the arena shifted instantly. He looked down at the canvas, listening carefully.
To his credit, the hurt fighter raised his hands again, refusing to back away from the challenge. There was still something inside him pushing forward, even as his body slowed. Emotion still drove him, even when strength was fading. And so he threw one more punch, a final attempt to change everything. That last effort carried all the weight of his belief, everything he had built in his mind before the fight. But it was red before it arrived, slipping harmlessly past its target. From the inside, a clean counter landed directly where it needed to. And this time, there was no recovery. He fell again, harder. And this time, he stayed down. The count moved forward, steady and final, until it reached its end. The referee stepped in and waved it off, signaling that the fight was over. And just like that, the noise inside the arena exploded. The crowd rose to its feet, voices filling every corner of the building. Celebration poured in from all sides as the winning corner rushed forward in excitement. But in the middle of it all, the man who had won stood still. He breathed, lifted a glove slightly, and acknowledged the moment without excess. Then his attention shifted, not toward the cheering crowd, but toward the defeated fighter being helped up. There was no anger in his expression, no need for showmanship or pride. He simply watched quietly, the same way.
During the quiet days that followed, he built a plan designed specifically for that kind of opponent. No noise, no drama, just focused preparation and clear thinking. Every movement, every adjustment, shaped around what he had learned in that single moment. The fight was being constructed long before the bell. When asked about it afterward, he explained it in the simplest way possible. He said the other man gave him emotion, and he returned it with a plan. That was the difference between them, and that difference decided everything. It was not about strength, it was about control. The man who lost had believed he created an advantage that day, believing he had gained something powerful. But what he had really done was reveal himself completely. He showed how he thought, how he reacted, and where his weakness lived. And that knowledge became the key to his defeat. In the end, it was not just a fight. It was a lesson played out in front of the world. Emotion may feel powerful, but control always lasts longer. And on that night, in that ring, the result proved it clearly. The victory had started long before the final punch ever landed.
What the crowd saw in those final moments was only the surface of something much deeper. They saw the fall, the count, and the victory, but they did not see where it truly began. It had started days earlier, in silence, in observation, in a calm mind that refused to react. By the time the punches landed, the outcome had already been decided. The defeated fighter sat on his stool, breathing heavy, trying to understand what had just happened. He had come in with belief, with noise, with emotion driving every move. But now, in the quiet after the storm, none of that could help him. The answers he needed were not in strength, but in something he had overlooked. Across the ring,
The winner remained composed, almost unchanged by what had just taken place. There was no wild celebration, no emotional release, just steady breathing and a quiet awareness. He'd done exactly what he planned to do. Nothing more, nothing less. That control was what separated him from everyone else. The difference between them had been clear from the beginning, but only one of them understood it. One fought with emotion, reacting to every feeling, every moment, every impulse. The other fought with clarity, choosing every action with purpose and patience. And when those two approaches meet,
what the crowd saw in those final moments was only the surface of something much deeper. They saw the fall, the count, and the victory, but they did not see where it truly began. It had started days earlier, in silence, in observation, in a calm mind that refused to react. By the time the punches landed, the outcome had already been decided. The defeated fighter sat on his stool, breathing heavy, trying to understand what had just happened. He had come in with belief, with noise, with emotion driving every move. But now, in the quiet after the storm, none of that could help him. The answers he needed were not in strength, but in something he had overlooked. Across the ring, the winner remained composed, almost unchanged by what had just taken place. There was no wild celebration, no emotional release, just steady breathing and a quiet awareness. He'd done exactly what he planned to do. Nothing more, nothing less. That control was what separated him from everyone else. The difference between them had been clear from the beginning, but only one of them understood it. One fought with emotion, reacting to every feeling, every moment, every impulse. The other fought with clarity, choosing every action with purpose and patience. And when those two approaches meet...
Meanwhile, the winner spoke very little, letting others celebrate around him. He did not need to explain much, because his performance had already said everything. Those who understood the sport could see the lesson clearly. This was not just about skill. It was about mindset. The slap that once looked like power now looked very different in hindsight. It was no longer seen as confidence, but as a sign of imbalance. A moment where emotion took over logic, where impulse replaced strategy. And against someone who thrives on control, that becomes a fatal mistake. The fight itself had followed that same pattern from start to finish. Early aggression, fueled by emotion, slowly turned into frustration. Frustration turned into desperation, and desperation led to mistakes. And every mistake was met with calm, calculated precision. As time passed, people began to understand what had really happened that night. It was not just a physical contest, but a mental one. A battle between chaos and control, between reaction and planning.